Hey, so today I'm excited to bring you a special episode where you're going to get to hear from one of my amazing Stressless Eating clients. Now, I've told you before that I am not here to persuade you or convince you or try to sell you on the fact that the diet mentality is the real problem here, and that the journey that I believe all women need to go on to create their freedom only comes when you take the time to heal your relationship with food and your body and yourself. So instead, I'm just going to let you hear it from women who have been where you are and have been locked inside their own food and body and shame prisons, and they've come out on the other side victorious. I'll let you hear it from them and see it through their eyes. And remember, this is a pretty big deal for these gals to share their journey because remember, this topic tends to carry around a lot of weight and a lot of shame. And in these case study interviews, they do not hold back. Like they share the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. I'm talking their fears, their struggles, their skepticism, all of it. So without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. All right, we are recording, we are live, and I am here with one of my amazing clients, Melissa. And, I love to share different experiences. I love to share different viewpoints, different journeys. One of my favorite things about Melissa is how well expressed she is and how in touch she is with her feelings and emotions. And she had done so much work before we even came together. So not that all my clients aren't fun to work with, but she just had this whole new level of awareness to really just integrate with everything that she knew. And we got to have a lot of fun just kind of geeking out on stuff. So first of all, welcome, Melissa. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we're just going to, dive on in and share your truth, share your journey. But before we do that, just kind of fill us in a little bit. Before we met, where were you? What was your life like before you started this program? What was your relationship with yourself like? What was your relationship with food and your body like? What was your life like, just a few months ago?
I would have to say that it was definitely a roller coaster ride. I've done every diet, every commercial, diet, health food plan that there was. And let's see, about 3 years ago, I had dramatically changed my life. I left a partner, I quit a job, I moved out of the house I'd lived in for 25 years, and I quit drinking alcohol. And all of those things resulted in a tremendous weight loss, and yay me. And then slowly but surely, I started adding some pounds back. And at first it was like, oh, well, that's to be expected. And I should say, I didn't lose a tremendous amount of weight just by, making all those changes. I went on yet another diet. And I reached a point and I thought, well, 10 more pounds and I'll be perfectly happy with myself and all will be right with my world. But it wasn't, because I found myself after about a year and a half of gaining 5 pounds and then gaining a little bit of still not being satisfied and then becoming almost desperate. Like I had tasted a little bit of what it felt like to feel good in my body. But I wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
Because I was still looking for the magical pill or fix or strategy or thing. And I didn't really know what I didn't know, but I knew that something had to give because I couldn't keep getting back on the roller coaster.
Yeah.
I was really tired of the roller coaster ride.
Yeah. And I think you're speaking to a lot of women listening right now, which is just it's kind of twofold. It's like, yes, when I lose the weight, then everything will be so easy and perfect and awesome and amazing. And I'll feel the way that I want to feel. Right. But also when you get to the peak of that weight loss, it's like, if what you did to lose that weight isn't sustainable, you are going to be kind of like a victim to gaining a little bit, and then the fear that it's going to keep coming back on, which if we know intellectually that nothing's really changed since the last time, like if we haven't healed our relationship with food, if we haven't healed our relationship with our body, of course it's going to come back on, And so I think you're speaking to a number of women who there's people listening that have lost the weight. They've done the thing and they're like, why am I still not satisfied? And why do I still feel like I'm on some sort of roller coaster physically and emotionally? So, and what would you say, like when you weren't on a diet, so to speak, and you were left at your default, what would you say your relationship with food and your body was like?
Well, I mentioned that I quit drinking alcohol. I didn't use alcohol and food the same because I have used food since I was 11 years old. I mean, I can trace it back to the very first time that I used food in an inappropriate way. And by that, I mean for something other than something to eat. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've learned, which anyone who takes you up on the offer and goes down this path, is food has two purposes: one, to fuel my body, and two, to taste good. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's all it's for. And I was using food for a host of other things. I was using food to feel better if something went wrong. I was using food for quick energy because I wasn't getting enough sleep or I wasn't exercising. So I was using food inappropriately all the time, as opposed to just the other night, I said, "Hey, will you bring me a cookie?" And the response I got was, "If you're really hungry, you'll eat an apple." And I was like, "I'm not really hungry. I want a cookie." Mm-hmm. And we laughed about it because I got up and got my own cookie because that's what I wanted. It had nothing to do with being hungry. They were there. They're delicious. I wanted one, not 10.
Right.
You know, so
many good distinctions here. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I first talked to you and you talked about healing the relationship with food, I was like, I don't even know what she means by that. And now I can't explain it to someone else, but I know I've done it.
Yeah.
Because food is now what it's supposed to be. Sometimes, like I was just visiting a relative and we ate a ton of ice cream because that's just what we did. And that's okay. I'm home now. I'm not going to be eating a ton of ice cream. It's just a part of it. Nothing can be off limits because then it becomes more desirable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you're touching on so many cool distinctions here, because I think people get this assumption that, like, if they're an air quotes healthy person, then, you know, they can't have certain things at certain times and that they're always going to have to eat a certain way. But also I think, you know, and there's a lot of diet culture that plays into this, but like people don't talk about how, like, you're allowed to enjoy the deliciousness of food, but when it becomes off limits, not only are you not enjoying the deliciousness of it, but you're associating shame and guilt and remorse and all of this judgment alongside of it. But then it becomes this game of like, I got to get in as many as possible right now because tomorrow I'm going to be back on my air quotes diet. And then it's not that one cookie, it's 10 cookies. It's feeling out of control. It's all that shame. Like, you are now experiencing this relationship with food where you are allowed to have whatever you want, and your choices by then, and there's obviously more that went behind this and within this, but now your choices change as a reflection of you changing your thoughts around food versus it being obsessing about the food, all these rules, all these restrictions. And like you said, like, that's the thing. I talk to people all the time and I'm like, I don't want you to live in a world where you can't go out with your relatives and enjoy a bunch of ice cream together. Like, that is part of life. And what happens is we kind of like forfeit our life at the, you know, for the sake of diet or weight loss, but we never even get that on the front end. Like, we don't end up losing the weight anyways, or we can't sustain it. We gain it back, but then we're missing out on our life. And that's where it's like, no more either or, no more having to choose between like fun, happiness, and health. Get to have both. And when you learn those distinctions, then you get to show up as the version of yourself that you are. Like you said, you're like, I can't describe what a healed relationship is with food, but I just know that I have it. It's a knowingness. So cool. I love that. And you're right. It is a roller coaster. You kept mentioning this roller coaster, like that on, off, the in, the out, and not to mention the emotions that come alongside it when you feel like out of control or to know that you're being too controlling over food. It is that roller coaster. Yeah.
You also brought up the shame. And I think because I had not reconciled myself to, I mean, you can line up my family members, my mom and my dad and their siblings and my grandparents, and look at them and know that I am never going to be a petite person. I just was born into this family of, 5'8", I'm one of the shortest people in the family. A long time ago, my brothers and I measured our shoulder width, and my shoulder width is the same as my brothers, who are 6'1" and 6'4".
Yeah.
So I had never resolved myself to, I was made this way. You know, now I don't need to be, you know, walking around carrying a bunch of extra weight, because that's hard on this frame that I was given by God. but I'm never going to be petite. And so resolving the fact that I take up this much space in a room when I walk in there. Some of it's the size that I am, some of it's my personality, but resolving that and embracing that got rid of a lot of the shame around when I walk up to a holiday spread table and I'm going to pick up a cookie or whatever. And I'm not worried about what anyone thinks about it. I'm not worried about what I'm doing. I'm embracing and I'm making decisions about that moment that I'm in. And getting off the roller coaster also created this sense of being patient. Like, I wasn't perfect an hour ago, and I'm not going to be perfect an hour from now, but I'm a work in progress and I'm constantly working on myself. But I'm also very content with where I am right this minute. So,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
That was huge.
That is huge. And I really want to, stack on this, what you just said, that what you just said really had nothing to do with food. It was all of this internal, it was your relationship with your body, your sense of self, your acceptance or lack of acceptance of yourself. And, we talk about all this all the time, like that, my favorite quote, when you argue with reality, you suffer. And it's like, this is the body that I have, right? It's not our body that's the problem. It's our thoughts about our body that turn into a negative emotion or a positive emotion. And every emotion's neutral, but you know what I mean? Like, whether it's serving us or whether it's not. And like, you took those thoughts captive and you started influencing how you were feeling and what you were saying about your body, even though your body in the scheme of things, like, didn't shift in that moment. Right. But your thoughts about it did, and you accepting it. And then you also bring up this concept of I call them third party goggles. Like, oh my gosh, are people judging my body? Oh my gosh, are they looking at what I'm eating? And that's where a lot of the shame is too, where we assume that other people are judging us, but it's really our own judgments. And the only way to take that captive is to really influence how we're seeing ourselves. And I love that you brought that up, because that is a testament to the work that you did, where you're just like, I can sit here arguing with the reality of who I am, or I can just learn to embrace it, accept it, and start influencing the choices that I make, including when I choose that cookie and when I don't. But now it's one cookie, it's mindful, you're eating it, you're enjoying it. It's not 10, like, just dismissively eating or mindlessly eating. It's all about, connecting to the version of yourself that you want to be, rather than fighting against who you are. It's just a different conversation. I love that you brought that up, because shame is such a big part of this. And that's the part that a lot of people don't talk about.
Yes, it is. And it's interesting to encounter other people who I know still have a very, just a unhealthy place in their life, or an unhealthy relationship, and see some of their behaviors and be able to see myself before this process in what this other person is doing. And my heart aches for them, because they don't have what I've been through. But then I also remember, I don't know, Leanne, if it was like 3 or 5 calls that we had to go through before we actually really got started with me, because I kept having questions. And, but I remember one of the things you saying was asking, are you radically committed to doing this for yourself? And I think each time you asked me that question, the yes got a little bit louder. And when I look at other people and my heart aches for them, I can see where I was in different points before I met you, where I wasn't ready. And I can see in them this lack of readiness. And again, my heart aches for them, because there's a lot of soul searching that goes into this process that you've got to be willing to do with yourself and for yourself. And if you're not willing to do it, this is a huge waste of effort and time and money, but more of effort and time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And nobody can want it for you. Nobody can do it for you. Like, you've got to be radically committed to transforming the heart of who you are, because anybody who's listening to this right now probably has heard me say over and over again, like, it's not a food problem. Food is not the problem. It's who we're being around food and the stories we're telling ourselves. It's the narrative. It's the relationship we have with food, and then the relationship we have with ourselves, and that's something that you've got to be radically committed to transforming, rather than what, I would go as far as say like 99% of the women out there that are like on some sort of journey trying to influence what they're eating. It's usually like they're radically committed to physique change and weight loss and, a diet. And like, that's the wrong, that commitment won't get you the long-term healing and then the long-term freedom that you were just describing, that you're like, I can't really describe what it is. I just know I have it. That doesn't come from being radically committed to a diet or radically committed to a weight loss. You've got to be radically committed to yourself, for yourself, from yourself. And you can speak to this too, because you are such a loving, giving person to everybody in your world, including in your work. And it's like a lot of women struggle with being able to put themselves first and pour into themselves because they think it's being selfish. But now you're seeing like, oh, I have so much more to give other people now that I have become radically committed to myself. And it's not selfish. It's not conceited or cocky or whatever to pour into yourself. It's just part of what has to happen so that you can put it outward.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Love it. So yeah, I love that. I love all of these little points that you're bringing up because they're such powerful distinctions, So why was this different than anything that you have ever tried or anything that you've ever done?
Well, I think that anybody who, if you've been on any of the commercial diets or even tried dieting yourself, it doesn't address what your expectations are about food. It doesn't address why you're eating when you're not hungry. And I mean, I still make jokes about like, so what does that hunger thing feel like? Because for so much of my life, eating was not about feeding hunger. It was for a whole host of other reasons. And no other process helps you go through, why are you eating? Why are you eating what you're eating? Again, just to go back to the past 2 weeks, I've been on little small, 4-day trips with family members. And so there was nothing about what we were doing that was typical. And my aunt asked, like on day 2 of the trip, so what's anybody want for dinner? And I was like, I don't care what it is. It just needs to be some fruit and vegetables because all this yummy junk food we've been eating for 2 days is great, but I'm not used to it. I need things that feel like I'm fueling my body. And that's not something I've ever said in my whole life before. I've never thought about how is eating that or eating that quantity of that thing going to make me feel. I've never thought about that. I've just gone wild abandon and done it and then felt horrible, whether it was the come down from the sugar high or the overeating and feeling yucky because of how much I ate. So nothing ever dealt with why do you eat? Nothing ever dealt with how do you want to feel? And there was, and you're so big on, not bringing up daddy issues or whatever. But I honestly think my parents had no idea how to teach me how to eat because no one ever taught them how to eat. And so I was this adult who had no idea about what I needed. The whole world should know that I have consumed coffee every morning of my life since I was like 20 years old. And Leanne Ellington pointed out to me, I don't think you really like coffee, which a year ago, if someone had said that to me, I would have been like, what? I've been drinking coffee for 30 years. No, you know what I like, people? I like coffee flavored creamer with sugar in it. And when I have that every day, I don't feel good. When I have it as a treat, I feel great about it. And so this whole process helped me to really think about what is important to me. What do I like? What do I want? How do I want to feel? And nothing else ever did that. All it did was constrict and restrict and manage and reward for sticking within a plan that wasn't my plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's so cool that you bring that up too, because I think we don't understand why this happens until we get it. And what happens is we are so used to allowing the calorie count, the diet, the nutrition, what we think the nutrition is, like the carbs, the fat, the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, the healthy, the unhealthy labels drive what we're eating, that we lose touch, or we become so desensitized to when our body is telling us, hey, I need nutrients, or I'm actually hungry. And even like you talking about the idea of like, no one's ever taught you to understand what hunger is. It's like, there's different types of hunger too. Like, am I emotionally hungry right now? Which is what we kind of discovered with the coffee. And it wasn't like, oh, I don't think you like coffee, but I think you were the one that was like, wait a minute. I think it's like, I'm having dessert every morning, and that's what I don't want to give up, you know? And so we started exploring that, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. I don't think I'm in love with coffee. I think I'm in love with the sugary creamers. And then it became an experiment about like, what can we do to, you know, all those. And then the conversation began rather than it being shut down. But you're so in tune with yourself that even, and I love how you shared how on your vacation, you were like, it wasn't like, oh, we can't eat any of this. You were just like, hey, my body's screaming at me. Like, I don't have any guilt or shame about what we've eaten, but I just know that I need to feed my body because it's talking to me. And before then, your body had been shut down, or your signals, your brain didn't know what hunger was, what it wasn't. It didn't know when it was emotional hunger, when it was physical hunger. It didn't know when it needed nutrients or when it wanted chocolate, right? It didn't know when it needed emotional nutrients or physiological nutrients from food. So there's so many distinctions that when we are so stuck in the world of the diet culture and diet mentality, but also the shame, the blame, the guilt, the comparisonitis, we ignore what we want or what we need because we're not asking ourselves the questions. We're telling ourselves what we think we already know. And a big part of, as you know, is I'm teaching you all how to ask yourself the questions that you're going to need to ask yourself to get the data that you really need. Because now we're talking to your nervous system. And that was your nervous system being like, hey, hello, just tapping you on the shoulder, being like, chocolate chip cookies are cool and ice cream's great, but get me some micronutrients, you know? And you listened. And then I love also, just to kind of brag on you for a minute, how you are so confident in who you are that you were unapologetic about telling the people in your life, like, hey, I'm cool with all this, but I also need some nutrients. And you weren't afraid to ask for it. There's no shame. There's no game playing. It's just like, this is what I need. Super cool. Super cool. So how has your life changed as a product of enrolling in this process and putting yourself through this process?
That's so hard to like answer that question because and anybody who goes through this process knows that even though it's a 9 to 12 week adventure, which is a very short amount of time in the whole grand scheme of things, all the changes are small and slow. And then you turn around and you're like, holy cow, wow, look at me. I'm awesome. So one of the changes is probably a huge fundamental change. And I even had to remind my partner the other day of this change because she said something about, gosh, it must be exhausting to always be thinking about food. And she was talking about sort of this aha that I had when I came home, and I can't even remember what it was, but I kind of shared this like big for me moment. And I was like, actually, this isn't exhausting. What was exhausting was questioning it and fretting over it and feeling guilt about it when I knew it wasn't something I was supposed to have. I said, this is enlightening, and it's constant enlightenment because yes, I was driving in the car and I was pondering, you know, and I came to this, whatever this realization was. That's so very different than fretting and thinking and worrying about every bite that I put in my mouth. And so a huge change is I don't really think about food like I used to. And I'm not a crazy regimented person. I'm an educator, so I'm on summer break right now. So it's really different than when I'm during the school year. But there are certain things that happen every day that are just how I do business now. It's not a diet. It's not a plan. I've never eaten breakfast in my life. I mean, in my whole entire life, I've never eaten breakfast. And I'm at this point where I would say 5 days out of 7, I ate a banana with peanut butter on it, quote, for breakfast, within the first couple of hours of getting up. And that's huge because every diet you ever go on, they're like, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And I'm like, I hate breakfast. I hate eating when I first get up. Now I make up for that throughout the rest of the day. It's not like I'm missing out on some calorie input or whatever. But, the changes are, I'm just really comfortable with the role of food in my life. Even on a binge day. And I mean, that's another thing that I think every diet that you ever go on, they make you believe that once you reach your goal weight, you'll never do these things again. Yes, you will. They're a part of the human experience. But just because I have a binge day or binge moment in the day doesn't mean that's my life destiny for every day, for always. That's okay, I feel like crap now. I probably won't do that again for a while. So it's not any one monumental change that I can say to someone listening, okay, if you walk this path with Leanne, here's the big thing that'll happen for you. If you walk this path with Leanne and you do the exercises with fidelity and with commitment to yourself, you will come out a happier, healthier, more content with life human being on the other side.
Wow. I love that. Happier, healthier, more content as a human being. Like, again, I know that's not as to some people as sexy as lose 30 pounds in 30 minutes, but it's like, sure, that's what it is about. That's we don't want to lose weight because of the weight loss itself. It's like, we want to lose weight because we think it'll make us feel happy and healthy and content as a human being. But what it does is it takes us in the opposite direction, because what we have to do is so radical and drastic. And if we are practicing the opposite of that every single day, it doesn't just magically go away. You are, like you said, bringing it back to that acceptance, the body that you have and embracing it and working with it and learning to feed it and nourish it and listen to it, versus arguing with the reality of this is my body right now and shaming it and blaming it and hating it and being further and further away from content and freedom and happiness. I think these are the things. And you mentioned the whole kind of incremental change factor. And that's the thing. People don't understand that when you introduce that much rapid fire change to your brain cannot possibly sustain it. And that's why, I talk about slow is smooth, smooth is fast, because we're working with the compound effect. It's not even it's not incremental. It's not exponential. It's not multiplier effect. It is a compound effect where it's 1 penny compounded, is 2 pennies, then 4 pennies, then 8 pennies, then 16 pennies, and 32. And, most people, you ask them what would you rather have $1 million at the end of 30 days or a penny compounded for 30 days? And a penny compounded, it ends up being 5 million something, right? But we don't think about it because we're like, oh, it's a penny, I'll just take the $1 million. It's that compound effect. But not only is the change greater and grander, but your brain is experiencing it in such a subtle way that it doesn't even realize it. And that's why your food freedom is getting easier the more you practice it, and you're getting better at it the more that you practice it. And it's not a game of perfectionism. It's not oh, I'm never going to overeat again. But now it's this time you overate and you're like, oh, now I'm aware of it. First of all, I'm not shaming it myself. I'm just looking at it as data. And it's reminding me how great I do feel when I'm not doing this. And I'm not going to do that again because I'm so committed to how I want to feel. And this was just further evidence that this is not who I am anymore. And it's not drama. It's just okay, that I don't want to do that again, but I am not going to sit in this shame. And I love how you are setting people that are listening to this up for the reality of the human experience. This is not a game of perfectionism. This is a game of experimentation. It's all about experimentation, which to me is the antidote to perfectionism, and you're right. That is one of the cool things about it is you look back and you're like, I don't even know how I got here because everything was so incremental. But it's also, we're playing the consistency game, not the intensity game. The intensity game is what got us here. That is the roller coaster. So I love that so much. Okay, so putting you on the spot for just a minute, because you went on a surprising trip, and I remember it being such a big deal when you came back because there were so many realizations, and to me, it's kind of like a symbol of the big transformation that you went through. So will you kind of just share a little tad about the bike trip that you went on and why it was such a big deal and why it was such a kind of pivotal point for you?
I never would have dreamed, even 6 months ago, that I would have taken a vacation that involved riding a bicycle all day for 6 days. And so I said yes to this adventure. And first of all, I rode what's called an e-bike, which it's important that people understand that that's like an assistance. It just makes it easier to ride. You still have to pedal and you still do all the work yourself. It's just, instead of having to struggle through it, you actually do it and enjoy it, I guess. Anyway, I did. And I surprised myself in that I said yes to the adventure, and also it is a vacation. So it's like this extravagant end-to-end gourmet meal type situation. And so at first it's like, okay, we're going to ride our bikes, but there's this reward of this amazing food. And then it just sort of kind of morphed into, after like 2 days of it, of like, okay, I can't eat like this I can't eat 3 meals and 3 snacks of this quality every day and still feel like riding this bike. So that was an interesting thing, to start out with, yes, all the yummy food, to part of the yummy food, to, I just need a little bit of food.
Yeah.
And then the other part was actually riding my bike 40 plus miles one day. But then on the next day saying, you know what, I'm not up for riding my bike 44 miles today. I'd like to ride this part and this part, but I don't want to ride that part. And it just being okay. The whole adventure was okay. And then at the end of it, having had so much fun and enjoying it so much that I wanted to do it again, that I was willing to say, hey, there's another one of these that's on my fall break. Would you consider doing that one? And so the food part of it was interesting. The activity part of it was surprising and amazing. And in the end, it's just like, I don't have to be a twig. I don't have to be a distance bike rider to enjoy doing some physical activity for a vacation.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And former versions of yourself wouldn't have gone. You know what I mean?
Oh,
the fact that
not.
you even went, like, I remember when you told me, and I was just like, this is a really big deal. And you guys having a conversation about, like, how can I make the experience of this better? And like giving yourself permission to say, you know what, I'm going to go with the e-bike. Like, I think anybody who's sitting on my end of this would be like, yeah, that sounds like the best compromise. And I remember, you sent me a message when you got back, and just being like, the experience of the food and just being around all this permission, and then just saying like, okay, I enjoyed this for a couple of days, but now I'm going to get back to just like being a lot more mindful about my food. And it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't anything. You were still enjoying it, but like you got to experience your vacation. And I know a lot of people listening, myself included, like, vacations can be a really big trigger for people, and think like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go off the deep end. And for a lot of people in the program too, being like, hey, is a vacation, like, I always tell people, I'm like, vacation's the best place for you to show yourself that you have the freedom that you think you do, because you can just enjoy the experience of life, enjoy the experience of food. And I love how this kind of comes full circle to what you were saying about accepting the body that you have right now and embracing it, and not putting limitations on your life because of what you think you're capable of and what you think you're not. Like, my favorite part of the whole story is that you even said yes to the trip at all. So I love it. I love it. Well, thanks for sharing that, because it was a big deal for you. And I think anybody who is listening to this and has experienced themselves kind of sitting on the sidelines of life and wishing that they had said yes, I think that's going to speak to a lot of people. So I wanted to just kind of put you on the spot and have you share that. And so, just a couple more things. Like, why do you think it was worth it for you to finally invest in really healing this and putting this struggle to bed rather than going down the diet mentality road or going on, some other short-term kind of Band-Aid? Like, why did you know it was worth it for you to really just invest in a long-term solution and finally put this to bed?
I think for me, and this is not going to be the same for other people, but I think the benefit is there, is I think that working with you has been the epitome of that saying that, I can't even remember what it is, but a lawyer should never represent themselves and a doctor doesn't know how to heal themselves. I'm a behaviorist. I mean, what I do in my work is I deal with kids' behavior and to some extent the adults who work with those kids, their behavior, and I help them see the error in what they're doing to get the outcome that they want. And so working with you helped me see the things that I was doing that were counterintuitive to the outcome that I wanted. I want to be at peace when I sit down to eat. I want to live a long life. I want to be healthy. And working with you helped me use a lot of the skills and knowledge I already had on myself. Now, I don't think I could have done it for myself. I had to have you facilitating it. And I had to have you saying, do this, not that, this week. And I remember even one of the modules, you were like, whoa, hold on, you're getting ahead of yourself. Not yet. And that was important because I was ready to zoom ahead like a bull in a china shop. And like what you said earlier, my brain needed me to slow down and let it be for, even if it was just for a week.
Yeah.
So it was worth it because of the science that's in how our brains perform and how interconnected our brain is to what our body does and wants. So I don't know if that's more too geeky of an answer, but
no, I love it. Get geeky. Perfect. Yeah.
To me, like, it's a household mantra now about pretty much everything. This is just data.
Yeah.
What is the data? What's the information? Now, how are we going to respond to it or react to it? And that doesn't mean we're not emotional. Right. It just means that we see the situation for what it is. It makes me sad, I might cry. It makes me happy, I might laugh. Mm-hmm. But the data itself is not emotional. It's just information.
Absolutely. And that's because you're now emotionally available to yourself to be able to process it rather than numbing out or disconnected or all those things, or just like, again, are not accepting it, so it's just now you have the tools to, because like you said, life goes on. Like, it's not this is not a game of perfectionism. It's like, how do we deal with our life and how can we get the tools to deal with it? And the other thing is, it's like, it's not going to stop coming. Like, life is going to keep coming at you. And now you have the tools to process it as it comes and not turn to food or not bury it down. And like you said, respond, not react. It's a lifelong way of thinking.
I have to also say, for anybody, I don't know anybody else who has said this, and maybe you have to have quit one substance to really get into this, but my biggest gripe and frustration my whole adult life about this whole dieting thing and food and all of that is, anybody who smokes can quit smoking, period. You don't have to do it. Anybody who drinks, all of those, quote, vices, you can just stop doing them, but you don't get to stop eating. You have to continue to fuel your body. And I never could, until this process, figure out how am I supposed to manage the fact that, let's just call it what it is, I'm kind of addicted to sugar. How do I manage that when I can't stop eating sugar? And I'm not talking about refined sugar. I'm talking about the fact that there's sugar in potatoes
absolutely.
And this process really did help me answer that for me.
Yeah.
Because I can't articulate the answer for anyone else. But I know for me, I'm at peace now.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. And first of all, it is such an individual answer for every person. That's why everything is just so, individualized. But it's such a powerful distinction. It's the difference between, like, we think we're addicted to sugar, but it's like, no, we've just practiced using it addictively, and I can practice using it non-addictively. And so now you've mastered how to utilize it as a tool of enjoyment and deliciousness. And not use it as this weapon of distraction and numbing and addiction. Is because now sugar can just be sugar, and you know what it is, and it's not running your life anymore. And you don't feel control of it, but you haven't, like you said, you can't abstain from food like you can from alcohol, drugs, whatever, right? So it's a matter of learning how to manage it and integrate that into a life that you can stick with forever and be free and be at peace with it. Peace is the main game, freedom and peace, so I love that. And so what would you say to anyone who's sitting on the fence right now and they're thinking like, hey, maybe I'll just go lose weight and then I'll deal with all this emotional stuff, or maybe I'll just go on another diet, whatever. What would you say to anybody who's sitting on the fence about making the decision to really heal their relationship with food, heal their relationship with themselves, heal their relationship with their bodies?
I honestly would say, if all you want is rapid weight loss, pick your poison, choose your diet, because you'll get it. But I promise you that until you deal with why you need to lose weight, and I'm not talking about a mom who, had 3 kids in 4 years and is carrying around 40 extra pounds because she just nursed lives into this world. I'm not talking about that person, because that person might be able to choose their diet, lose their weight. My childhood best friend is that person. She went from a size 6 to a size 8 her adult life. She was a 6 before baby. She was an 8 after. Boom, done. I'm talking about for those of us who have had this ongoing love-hate journey with food and how we use it. If you want to be at peace with food and its role in your life, then this is something that can help you make peace with that. No other diet. And I can name them all if you want me to, because I've done them all and I've spent thousands of dollars on them. None of them helped me be at peace. And I will freely say, I have not lost the 40 pounds I came to Leanne to, like, how do I get back to this weight?
Yeah.
I've lost like 6 of them.
Cool.
But you know what? That's the start. And I know how long it took me to gain them, and I'm looking at being healthy. And if I get back to that weight, I'll be like, yay, me.
Yeah.
And if I don't, I'll probably be like, yay, me anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I love that you brought that up, because I always say to women, I'm like, if you're looking to get in your skinny jeans and lose a bunch of weight really quickly, like, this is not the program for you. I'm not the person to help you do that. There's so many different ways to do that. But if you're looking to really heal this, and it's interesting that you say that. You're like, I haven't lost the 40 pounds I came to lose, but not focusing on weight loss, not dieting, giving yourself more permission, going on trips and being super busy, eating the ice cream with your relatives. You also lost weight. Like, that's pretty flippin' cool. You know what I mean? And it's like, I tell my clients all the time, I'm like, what if freedom was your weight loss plan? And it was this little incremental weight loss plan, but you're focused on who you want to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. Is there anything that you're practicing right now that you can't practice the rest of your life, that's not going to keep getting easier the more you practice it?
Right. I mean, no, that's, yeah.
Yeah. And so what a cool, and then to boot, like, not even focusing on losing weight, because everybody knows that this isn't a weight loss program. You also lost weight. It was the residual, because it was the weight of the weight. You're not depriving yourself. You're eating the yummy treats. It's super cool. So but you're right. It's like, you've got to be the version of yourself that's ready to heal, to put this to bed, to find peace, to find freedom, to be more content in who you are, to love and like and trust yourself and accept yourself, mind, body, brain, heart, soul, food, and non-food related. It's really this 3-dimensional conversation. So thank you for just sharing yourself so openly and honestly, and being super vulnerable and giving a voice to a lot of the things that I'm sure there's a lot of women thinking, but don't have their own words to put to it yet, because there is that shame. Thanks for unlocking that for us. Anything else that's on your mind that you want to share? We covered it.
No.
Okay.
No.
Awesome.
Just contentment.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your hearts and your truth. And ladies, thanks for listening. We will see you next time. Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you like what you heard and you're interested in breaking out of your own food, body, and diet prison, here's what I want you to do next. Head on over to stresslesseating.com. That's stresslesseating.com and sign up to watch the Stressless Eating webinar, where I'll walk you through the exact 5-step game plan my female clients use to conquer emotional eating, self-sabotage, and finally heal themselves from the restrictive all-or-nothing diet mentality for good, but without obsessing or spending years in therapy to address it. I've laid it all out for you there in 5 easy steps. Remember, healing your relationship with food and your body does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance to make it happen, and we've helped clients all over the world take back their power from the food and find true and lasting freedom, while enjoying life and warm chocolate chip cookies along the way. To see if we can help you do the same, head on over to stresslesseating.com. I'm Leanne Ellington, and I'll see you next time.